If you hunt enough, you learn the truth. What you seek speaks a language and knows it well. That's why every Primo's call for everything you hunt is made the right way. We sweat every detail so you get more out of every hunt, and nothing leaves our hand until we know it'll work in yours. Because we don't just make the world's best calls, we speak the language. Primos.
The 1911 is one of the most iconic firearms in history. Designed by John Browning, the 1911 was the standard issue sidearm of the U.S. military from 1911 to 1985. While Colt produced the original, almost every major firearm company has produced its own version. It's wildly revered for its reliability, crisp trigger, and is still a favorite for all types of shooters. Whether you're looking to buy or build a 1911 and just about everything for guns, log on to midwayusa.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. All right, everybody. Just a real quick, Latitude has a 20% off sale going through the 31st, so get over there and check that out. They've got the Method 2s in stock. They got the Vapor lines, the new knee pads, as well as the grip tape for their carbon sticks. And those have that glow-in-the-dark stuff on them, too, so you can see them in the dark as they're coming down. So definitely get over and check that out. Save some money over there at latitude.com. This podcast is something I feel like no one talks about. We all know, about tree stand safety. We talk about that. We talk about, all of these different gear-related items, and we seem to think that, saddle hunting is one of these things where you can't fall. I mean, I've said it myself. You can't fall. And here is a story of a guy that has fallen out of his tree stand, or fallen out of his saddle, rather, while one sticking. We kind of go through what happened, how it happened, and kind of ways to prevent it, because one sticking is one of those things where there isn't an actual tutorial. We're taking things from rock climbing and mountaineering and applying them to hunting, and then in that we want to be the quickest, lightest, cheapest manner possible. That doesn't always translate to safety. And you'll even hear me in this podcast talking about things that I do that's not in spec, and we're still doing that without thinking of the long-term repercussions of that. So this podcast is something to really, as we're practicing, as we're getting ready for the season, as we're trying out new gear, as we're going back through our gear from last year, seeing what we need to change, seeing if everything is still good. We're inspecting our gear. Definitely this is something that we should be doing as well. And I think you guys are going to get a really good insight on this. It's great. It's not a somber podcast by any means. It's actually kind of a fun podcast and a great topic to talk about. But regardless, I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode. Got to give a huge shout out to our latest Patreon, Zach Potter. Zach will be up at the Total Archery Challenge, so I'll bring your shirt up there, Zach. Appreciate the support. And if you guys want to get in on that, I think we're coming up on the end of the second quarter here, so we're going to be doing some giveaways here from all of our partners, Huntworth, Latitude, Zinger, Genesis 3D, Lucky Buck, Zinger, Canati, all of those guys, Spartan Forge, Big Shot, the list goes on. Some really great stuff there, so definitely check that out if you want to get in on that. Last chance before the next quarter for us to do that. And I'm actually, while you're listening to this, I'm going to be out in Montana hunting with some of our Patreons on our BHC West Patreon hunt, doing that bear hunt. Those guys are out there right now. I fly out tomorrow, but you'll be hearing this, and I'll be out there hopefully standing over a bear. But we'll see how that goes. But anyways, big shout out to Zach. Thanks so much for the support. And like I said, I know you guys are going to really appreciate this podcast. It's something that we should definitely talk more about, maybe every year as we get closer to season and when guys are trying out new stuff and trying to figure stuff out. So as always, enjoy the episode. Thanks so much for listening. All right, everybody, Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And if you guys are hearing this in real time, I am somewhere in Montana chasing bears, picking ticks off myself, glassing giant wide open spaces. But we're kind of in that time of year where, you know, people are trying out new stuff. They're getting new gear. You're trying to get everything dialed in for the upcoming season, making plans and things like that. And a lot of guys are out, you know, shooting their bows, trying to like tidy up their gear. And this podcast is kind of I don't want to say like a darker podcast, but it's another one of these ones that's kind of like an off topic. And we're going to talk with Chris Coon, another fellow Michigan hunter. You know, he's one of the guys that was on the first tethered 10. I mean, he's I would say like a big buck hunter. And I hunted with him in Kansas. If it weren't for Chris and his brother, I wouldn't have shot this deer right behind me here. Just because of the way that everything played out. And being down there with Chris, we talked a lot about, you know, hunting styles and stuff. And we'll get into a little bit about that. But we got into a conversation where Chris said, you know, I actually fell out of my one sticking setup. And I was like, wait a minute, saddles are the safest thing on the planet. And you can hang upside down in them. Like, how does this happen? So we're going to kind of walk through all that today. And among other things, but we're going to talk a little bit about gear, about setup, and about safety with Chris Coon. How are you doing today, Chris?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Not too bad. Not too bad. This is, you know, like I said, this is the time of year where I feel like a lot of people are either doing their honeydew lists, you know, getting their gear somewhat, you know, they're like, maybe I'll get my bow out. Like through our Patreon group, they're doing their like the one shot challenge and stuff like that. And then as we get closer to the season, last year they were doing it out of the saddle. So they were actually shooting out of a saddle. And, you know, all that's great to get that practice, to get that muscle memory. But, you know, even as, you know, guys like you and me, you get out there and sometimes you get complacent and stuff like that happens. So that's kind of where we're going to go with this today. But let's talk a little bit about your like hunting history. Like when you first started hunting, what was the gear like? What was it? What was your style?
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to when I was a teenager. I mean, the first buck I ever shot, first deer I ever killed was in a swamp up in Leroy, Michigan when I was 14 years old, I think. I kind of got interested in it. My dad took me down to the local archery shop and bought me the cheapest compound bow for a 14-year-old kid that you could possibly buy. And I went back in the swamp and hung me up a stand about 14 feet in the air. And trying to think if I had any safety stuff since you just mentioned that a second ago in that setup. And I don't think there was. I mean, I just pretty much climbed up and sat down. It wasn't very high up off the ground, but ended up shooting a little 5-point. My first night ever actually up in the tree, and pretty much been hooked on bow hunting, I'll say, ever since then. And then honestly, I was a sports guy growing up, played basketball in high school and college, and that pretty much kept me out of the deer woods, I would say, for the most part. Except for when I came home and visited like for holidays and stuff. But then once I got out of college and moved back and kind of settled down into a career, I got kind of back into it a little bit more big time than what I was in the past. And now it's, just like all you guys, it's something I look forward to every year, shoot my bow on a regular basis, and kind of, just a stress reliever for me to go out and shoot 40 arrows and drink a beer in the yard pretty much.
Yeah. When you first started hunting, like what was the style? Because so Chris was Chris and his brother were the guys that I stayed with out in Kansas. They just happened to have a Airbnb already. And they said, hey, we got extra room, like come down and, the rest is history. But we were talking, and if you've never been in like a deer camp type setting or been around people who, I don't know, have a different hunting style, have a different hunting level as you, where that's what I kept telling Chris down there. I'm like, you're after bigger deer than I am. Like, I'm just out here to find something 100 inches or bigger. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a monster. And, you guys had seen a deer on the side of the road, went in and like tried to figure out this one deer, where to
Yep.
me, I mean, and I understand the, like, you don't want to leave deer to find deer and stuff like that, but talk about your mindset, like in that type of scenario, because like for me, you're following this deer's tracks to figure out the route that he took in there. And like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that we were like in the peak rut or anything, but it definitely wasn't the time of year where this deer's like on a bed to food pattern. So like, to me, it's like, yeah, maybe he'll do that again, but I'm not going to go try and find his bedroom or whatever. So like, your mentality when you're hunting is a much different style than mine. So kind of talk about that, your style now versus when you were
Yeah.
a kid.
Yeah, sure. So when I first started, it was more of like hang a ladder stand or just hang a stand. And it really all started when my brother-in-law got me out in Missouri, probably, I don't even know how long ago now, 7, 8 years ago, I will say. And once I started hunting out there and kind of seeing bigger deer, um, I don't know, it just kind of trickled down, where for me, it was always, if I killed one, I wanted to shoot one that was bigger. So it started with that. And I ended up actually in Michigan. I was hunting some private land with a buddy probably the year before I started going to Missouri. And it was the biggest Michigan deer that I had ever seen with a bow in a tree. And I ended up shooting at him at 35 yards and missed him. I didn't have a rangefinder with me, and I misjudged how far away he was and shot right underneath him. The shot was perfect if it was about 4 inches higher, but it went right underneath the deer and I missed him. So that's what kind of, when that happened, that's what made everything click for me. Like, I'm a very a competitive person. Like, I couldn't stand the fact that I failed, right? So after that, and my brother-in-law got me out in Missouri, I started shooting my bow on a regular basis, where before I was one of them guys that would just take their bow out, a month before the season and take it to the shop and, get it tuned or whatever. And do it that way. But now it's like I shoot on a regular basis. The summer before I killed my tethered 10 buck in Missouri, I mean, I was literally, I made that shot 1,000 times before I went out there, even though, I didn't know that it was going to happen. I just practiced like it was going to happen pretty much. But yeah, so a lot of like ladder stands, tree stand hunting, basically going out, picking a spot on like a predetermined private chunk and going out and just sitting there and waiting for deer to come to me. That's how it started until, I would say, I don't know, until I really got serious, probably when I turned 30, I'll say 10 years ago or so. And I started hunting in Missouri. I got into the public land stuff. I started watching all the stuff on YouTube and all that, like everybody else. And that got me like, man, I started watching those guys and realized that I really need to be more mobile instead of just sitting in one spot. And once I started doing it and, figuring out, like, I started with a climber that I borrowed from a buddy that lives down in Grand Ledge. And I took that out there. And the first year that I went out to Missouri on public land, I spent more time walking around with a climber, clanging around, than I did actually deer hunting. So I learned my lesson with that. And then from there, I went to like a lone wolf tree stand, like the mobile setup when they had the big long sticks that were super heavy. I carried one of them around for a couple of years. Had a trip where I came back one year and I like messed my back up. I like fell in a creek, and the lone wolf stand on my back was so heavy and I had so much crap on my back that it messed up my back pretty bad for a couple months. And I think that was what kind of steered me toward being even more mobile with like the tree saddles and stuff. I seen the hunting public guys using them, and I just got one and tried it. And I was like, man, it blew my mind, honestly. Like, cause I have tried everything else to just be completely mobile. Like, basically when I go out and I see a deer, and it's a shooter buck, I want to figure out, you like asked me about the tracks and just the way I do it. I see a target buck, I guess, and then I just get in my mind just trying to figure out where he's coming and going and use whatever equipment I got to use to get to where he is or close enough to him where I think he's going to be to kill him. Just like, anything in life, it's not always perfect. Obviously, it doesn't always work, but here and there you do get lucky. You need a little luck and a little bit of expertise. And every now and then it comes through like you did in Kansas.
So
I guess.
One of the things that, strikes me about that, I don't want to say fear of failure, but that disdain for failure.
Yep.
Goes back to, in my mind, like being a college athlete and the drive to kind of do that and then implementing that. And I think we see that in a lot of guys, especially like the very high level deer hunters. It's like very singularly focused, is like, I'm going to see this deer and I'm going to track this deer. I'm going to know this whole deer. I'm going to be a serial killer on this deer. And I'm going to,
Sure.
Did that transfer over, like when you were going from climber to lone wolf to saddle, like where did safety equipment, like I know lots of guys that hunt from a climber that never wear a safety strap because they're like, oh, I can't fall out of this thing. I fall asleep in it all the time. I'm not going to get hurt. And then, all of the, tree stand guys who are like, I don't hunt that high, so I don't need a safety strap, all of that sort of stuff. So how did that factor in?
Big time, actually. So I will say, for the record, this is my own opinion, but I almost died in a climber, I would say probably about 3 times. And I think part of it was just because I wasn't really familiar with it. Like I just needed a way to hunt mobile out in Missouri, like the first time I ever went there. And I didn't have anything else at the time. And we had a lease out there where we had like preset stands and stuff. But I want to do the whole public land hunting. So going out there with the climber, I dropped the bottom. So actually the first trip I ever went, I didn't even have a rope. You know how you tie a rope to the top and the bottom?
So I'm in the exact same boat because every climber that I had, save one, was a hand-me-down climber, and none of it didn't come with any of that stuff.
Yep.
So I've dropped the bottom of my climber. From 30 feet.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So, and that's, just honestly being up in the air like that, I had never been, like all my stuff, like the land, like the private land in Michigan, like the story I told, the big buck I missed there, like my buddy and his dad had all the stands preset with straps and everything. So like, I didn't have to worry about it. But when I started doing the public land stuff with the climber and I dropped the bottom out a couple times without having a rope, when I came back from that trip, the guy I borrowed it from was like, oh yeah, you need to tie a rope from the top and the bottom. And I like never even thought about it. Right. It was like an afterthought, like, oh, I guess that would make sense. Then I can't, then it won't fall all the way to the ground when I mess up. But that, when that happened out there, I was like, it's no fun. You've been there. It's no fun being 30 feet up in the air, basically stuck. Like, how am I going to get down? And, it's pretty dangerous. I had kids, my oldest boy's 10 now. So 10 years ago. So like, that's always in the back of my mind. Like, I want to do whatever I can possibly do to make sure that I return home from the woods, right? Any deer in the world isn't worth falling out of a tree and getting hurt. So I kind of started thinking about it. And then I looked into like the lone wolf, right? And transferred into that, which was a lot safer because I always kept a strap in my bag. But even as I was climbing, I always only ever used a lineman's belt. And even on my lease, like the presets, we didn't have like lifelines. My buddy, Rob Yarmark, which I think you know him. Do you know Rob?
I think we're friends on Facebook. And
so he actually made me a couple lifelines and I took out there and hung them. And it's like half the time climbing up the tree, it's like, man, I don't know why I'm using this thing. It seemed like more of a hassle, right, than what I was getting on it. But I get that it was being safe. But honestly, transitioning from the lone wolf to the tree saddle after the climbers and stuff, I can remember the first few times I ever hung in a saddle. The safeness of it is what really kind of blew me away. Like I felt like being attached to the tree all the time, it was like, well, as long as you have your lineman's belt around the tree and you're kind of tethered in, something really crazy would have to happen to fall, right? That's how I felt when I initially started saddle hunting. And that's pretty much one of the biggest reasons why I just stuck with it at this point.
It's funny, man, because I remember the first time when I was like, okay, I'm going to saddle hunt. Like, we're going to do this. And I shot out of the saddle. I did all the stuff at home. But I went and got, I want to say like 4 sticks up. I had 4 Muddy Pros. I got 4 sticks up, set the platform, and I was doing an observation sit on this knob. And man, I tethered in, got on the platform, like leaned back into the tether, made sure that it was set, undid my lineman, tucked it in. Are you overwhelmed by the hundreds of food plot mixes out there? Well, you are not alone. And Vitalize Seed has developed a program that takes the guesswork out of food plotting. Vitalize makes it simple with their 2 core mixes, Nitro Boost and Carbon Load. Nitro Boost is their spring-summer food plot mix, and Carbon Load is for planting in the fall, each having a diverse mix of over a dozen seed types that are highly attractive to whitetail. Food plotting made simple. Each mix provides necessary nutrients to the soil, making for better plots each season. This also saves you money by needing less Roundup and fertilizer every year. The 1-2 system simplifies your food plots just how nature intended. And for the more advanced habitat managers, Vitalize also offers a variety of natural amendments with products like their seed feed that offers seeds immediately available minerals ready as soon as they germinate. Make biology work for you. Order now at vitalizeseed.com. And I was like, the only thing holding me up is this one rope. And like that's everything. And I'm like, do I think that this rope is like good enough? And then, of course, being like super new to it and everything, like I didn't have the platform cammed over good, so it was like a little bouncy, and I'm walking around trying to see what's up. And my father-in-law is down at the base of the stake because he was on the ground looking the other way, and he's like looking at me like I'm a monkey fucking a football. Like, what are you doing? Because it was so not fluid. It was like, I mean, you're doing, what do I do with my hands? Like when you're climbing up and trying to figure out, like, I didn't have a good system, like how to bring up the sticks, and I'm trying to do it still in one trip. And man, it was a mess. And I'd climbed with sticks before, but I don't know why that time. But yeah, that first time, like as soon as I lowered myself down on the tether, I'm like, yeah, I don't know about this. Like, but so in that, you go from hunting from a saddle, and then like, I think you're like the second person that we've had on here that's like one stick gung ho guy.
Oh yeah.
And it's the one thing that like pains me the most, right? Because I don't know. And if you're listening, and I met you at one of these shows and you were asking me about one sticking, don't assume that I'm thinking about you, but I'm thinking about everybody at these shows that have never been in a saddle before, and they come up and they want to learn about saddle hunting. And I love showing people all the saddles, how everything works, like how I do it, when we're, how Greg does it, how Joe does it, like any of these way, like how people like to do this kind of stuff. But I think that there's so much buzz about like, oh, you got to carry less stuff, you got to do this, like it packs up so nicely. But like if you've never done it and you've really never like mobile hunted before, like, man, to go from a ladder stand to one sticking is not.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and there's so many people that will do it, and then their one sticks for sale, and they're like, yeah, it's not for me. And I feel like that's a lot of, even with a saddle, where people don't give it like a fair shot. But I think if you've never even hunted from a saddle or done anything, like, man, you're way behind the curve, unless you're a super, like, maybe like yourself. Like if you're like a super driven individual where you're like, I did all the research, I'm going to do this. This is the way that it's going to be. It pains me so much because these guys are like, what do you think about one sticking? And I'm like, man, I can get up the tree just as fast or faster. You've got the Latitude Carbon SS sticks or the one sticks, or, I'm sure there's some other ones that I'm missing that are like in the same like 1 pound range, like we're not talking about a ton of weight here. We're not talking about a ton of bulk. Like everything is becoming very, very more streamlined. I mean, shoot, those new trophy line hyperlight sticks, the way that they pack up and what they weigh, those are a really slick product. And so to be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And then, I mean, if we're really playing devil's advocate here, and we'll get into it in a minute, but like I just said, like, oh, my whole life is just this one rope, and now that's all you have the
Yep.
whole way. It's just not for me. So for you, like, what was that transition and why just to one stick?
Yeah, honestly, I just seen some videos. Greg Staggs is a guy, right? That he's kind of. I mean, I don't. There's plenty of guys that one stick, right? But he's a guy that I started following and watching and stuff, and it just kind of piqued my interest about only carrying one stick. Disclaimer: I mean, I've been climbing trees for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I mean, I was climbing trees. It's like what I did. I was falling out of trees when I was a kid, just climbing them and shooting squirrels and at birds and stuff, with pellet guns and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I just, I tried it, and it was, and I'll be honest, it's one of them things where, like, the first couple times I did it, just like the story that you just told with your sticks and your platform, it's like the first couple times I did it, I was like, man, I'm not sure. Right. But I just kind of stuck with it and practiced quite a bit. And, like my fall that we're going to get into, it's like I practiced, and like I'm one of them guys where there's public land right down the road from my house. So I'll get out of work one day or whatever if I have some free time, and I'll throw all my stuff on. I'll throw it in the back of my car. And I have like 7 or 8 different trees picked out where I'll go practice. Like I'll go it's like my lead up to hunting season that I do, right? Just to make sure I don't know, like a baseball player goes through their reps or a football player warms up. Like I do that throughout the summer. So when I leave for a Missouri trip or Iowa trip or Kentucky or Kansas or wherever I'm going, I want to be up to speed and make sure that I'm going slow and I'm doing everything safe. So I do practice a lot, but for me, it was just carrying less stuff. And I'll be honest, I went back and forth on it. I would say for probably a year, 2 summers, where I went into one summer and I was like, all right, I'm going to get in, because I got put on the tethered pro staff. So I got some of their tethered one sticks, and because I always wanted them. So I got them, and I was like, all right, I'm going to give 4 sticks and a platform a shot again. And I had a Predator platform and 4 ones. And I got to the base of the tree with all of that. And I was just like, I kind of laughed and shook my head, like, why do I have all this stuff? Like after you one stick and you get the hang of it, I just feel like, for me personally, which obviously everybody's different and people have their own stuff that they like, but for me, it's like I really love having all my ropes and just in my side pouches and just that one stick with an aider to get up and down. And I don't know, I just practiced a lot and got the hang of it, and I feel like I don't really see myself going any other way anytime soon. I tried it. Like I said, I tried going back to 4 sticks and a platform, and it's just too much stuff. So does that answer your question good enough?
Sure. And this is going to come into play later, right? But one of the problems with kind of these, I guess what we do with saddle hunting, we live in this echo chamber where we think everybody knows what it is. Well,
Yeah.
go to the NRA show or go to one of these big shows, and people are like, that's how you hang your tree stand, or that's what you use
Right.
for your ladder stand. We think that everybody knows what this is. And now you go one further into this even more fringe part of
Right.
saddle hunting. So if saddle hunting wasn't weird enough or not mainstream hunting enough, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to take all the sticks out of it, and I'm just going to have a one stick in a platform.
Yeah.
And there isn't like, and we're dealing with this, and we're, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, however long, tethered and trophy line have kind of brought saddle hunting back. And we still don't have a standard for equipment for safety and all that. And everybody says, we don't need it because it's not a tree stand. They need a whole new, and they're working on it and all this stuff. But where did you get your gear list or your information? Because you could use a figure 8, you could use a Mad Rock, you can use a CT Rolling Lock, you can use all of this rock climbing stuff. but where do you get your gear list from that initial setup? Like, where are you getting your information?
For me, you mean one sticking, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like when you first buy your setup, like,
Yep.
because that comes into play here in a
Right.
minute.
Yeah. The first one sticking video I ever saw was the Greg Staggs video where I think his son was like 14 at the time, where I was just like, one sticking, what is this? I just seen a tagline or whatever and clicked on it and I was like, what the heck? And then I watched it and I was like, oh man, like I could do that. So then I got online and started doing, actually, then it wasn't even online. It was like, that's when all the Facebook pages were all booming for like the Saddle Hunter Nation and Saddle Hunter and all that, which when you mentioned that earlier, it made me think I haven't been on one of them. And I don't even know how long. It's been a while. But anyways, yeah, so Greg Staggs. And then the first setup that I ever bought was from Dano, I think. EWO, I think, is the first one I bought. So and honestly, and that's back then, that was good for like them pages and stuff, because I would get on there and ask like questions, if I didn't know something or whatever. And a lot of the guys that were on there, I would call like some of the OG guys, right? Like Carl from Tethered is one of the guys that like I got some of the pieces from him, some of the pieces from Greg. I just kind of took and kind of bought everything and tried what I liked and then made my own custom setup, I would say. Like I know, like right off the bat, when I got the 40 foot of rope, I was like, I climbed up one time and I was like, I'm never going to need all this rope. So I immediately cut my rope down to 33 feet because I don't ever really hunt that high. I know some guys do, like John Eberhart, he hunts like a mile in the air, but I don't do that. So yeah, so just like making like small tweaks and stuff, but that's kind of how I first saw it and then got into buying everything to test and try to make my own setup, I guess.
And then how long had you been one sticking? I mean, how many trips up and down the tree had you had before you fell?
Oh man. Well, I demoed at the Genesis 3D thing, the event there, I would say 3 years ago. I think it is now, at Austin's event up there that he did in Ravenna. And I was still kind of new to it. No, I had one season under my belt when I did that demo. And like I said, I mean, I practiced all summer, but I fell, let's see, it's 24. So I fell 2 years ago now in Missouri. So I would say I had a solid 2 years of experience in one sticking, because I think it was, man, obviously I have 3 kids and stuff and I'm busy, so I forget with times and stuff. But I want to say, man, it was at least a year and a half where I one sticked and I practiced religiously before I fell when I was on public land out in Missouri.
And so take us through that. Like, how did that happen? Like, take us through like what happened, like how it happened, and then the why of what it happened, because you
Sure.
reverse engineered
Yep.
it.
So the biggest thing, I guess, that I want to start off by saying is like, I picked the absolute worst tree that you could possibly pick to climb, I guess, if you're one sticking, which all that goes back to what you asked me about at the very beginning about the buck in Kansas. Because the tree that I was in, the only reason that I was there is because I didn't know, but there was a 50-50 chance that a nice buck was going to go by that one tree. Just to kind of lay it out, there was kind of like a little ditch. There's like where a cornfield and kind of a swamp meet each other, but there was like a big long ditch that probably ran for about 500 yards. And there was, I don't know, baseball size to like softball size trees, small little trees along this. And it's a spot where I go back to pretty much every year when I go out there. So I'm very, very familiar with it. But the bucks, they come off this cornfield and they basically go back to bedding right through this little ditch because it's kind of sunk down in there. So they'll stay. What I've learned over the years, just scouting and hunting and stuff, is that they'll stay if they can kind of be sunk down in and stay down in there. They'll travel that. So there's literally only 2 or 3 trees that I could have possibly got in to kind of get elevated enough to get a shot down in there. And I was just kind of in a hurry, running behind. My brother and I were out there together. It was his first time ever hunting there. So I gave him an Onyx pin and just kind of sent him along his way, like, here you go. Here's where I think you're going to see some deer, So he went, and then I went my own way because I knew where I was going. And just on my way back in there, I was looking, a lot of the trees I was trying to get in were too big. So I ended up climbing one that basically went up like, I don't know, 13, 14 feet in the air, kind of at a slight curve. The tree was bent. So basically where I had my platform, I would say I got up to about, my feet were probably at 14, maybe 15 feet in the air. And when I put my tether out, it was literally like I reached my arm straight out in front of me. So the first thing I'll say is, after I fell, I should have never climbed that tree. That was literally the first thing I thought. Like, I can remember thinking in my mind when I was on my way down, like, I knew I shouldn't have climbed this tree. So that's the first thing I would say is, like, if you climb, a basketball sized tree that's straight up and down, which obviously not every single one's perfect. I've never had any issues climbing one stick in that regard. But the reason why I fell, that I realized after the fact, was because of the way that I set up in the tree. So I had my platform at like I said, 14, 15 feet. And then on my way down after hunting that night, there was a branch that kind of went out the front, and I stopped for a second after I had already taken my platform off and threw it on the ground, which luckily I threw it far enough away from me that when I did fall, I didn't land on it. Because funny enough, when I did the demo at Austin's, I had a guy actually ask me, because you have the little clips that go on the back of your saddle. And when I did my demo, I took it off the tree and clipped it on that. And the guy stopped me and said, well, what if you fall? You're going to land on that. And at the time, obviously, this is going back some time, but I kind of chuckle a little bit like, well, obviously I'm not ever banking on falling. But when that guy asked me that question, I realized, like, you know what, he's got a good point. If I do fall and that's on my back, it's literally going into me, right? I mean, especially like I hunt off out on a limb Big Bob. And I don't know if you've ever used one of them, but the teeth on them things are like, I mean, it'll go, it'll cut 3/4 of an inch into you if you were to land on it. So that's actually, now when I take them off the tree, I actually kind of try and get it kind of further out of the way just in case if I do fall. And luckily this time when I did, it was far enough out of the way where I didn't land on it. But on my way down on my descent, I use a Mad Rock Safeguard. And part of this conversation is Canyon CIV is what I used to use. That was just like a rope that was recommended to me from numerous different people. Like at the time when I got into it, that's what I'll say all the cool kids were using, right? Everybody thought that was the best. And what I realized after the fact was, because I practice so much and I hunt so much, that rope actually kind of got not really frayed out, but kind of smooth and slippery. And I think when that happened, basically the diameter of the rope, I think, went out of spec to where the Mad Rock, I was going to grab it and bring it up here so I could like hold it in front of the camera to show you, but it's got that little lip on there where the rope curves around. And because my rope got so small, it came out of that loop. So when I stopped midway down and I put my left leg on the tree, I created just the slightest little bit of slack in the line. And when I did, it hit it just right and popped out of there. So, and like kind of simultaneously when that happened, I took my foot off the tree. And when that happened, the mechanical brake in there or whatever, I didn't have the lever open. My rope was just out of the Mad Rock at this point. So I was basically just free falling. I had my backpack on and my headlamp and stuff. And I can still remember falling and seeing, the rope above me and my yellow pull down rope. And I tried grabbing that, and I burned my hand really bad on that. Because it wrapped around, and as I was going down, I had a big burn on my hand. And next thing I know, I just hit the ground. Luckily for me, that spot, the tree that I picked, there was like a hill that went down to the tree, and it was all sandy. There was no rocks. There was no trees. It was literally sand where I landed. But had my backpack on. So when I hit, my backpack was full of stuff. So it slammed my head backwards, and my light flew off. My phone. I used to hunt with a bino harness, and I put my phone in the front pouch, and that flew off. So like after I hit the ground, I got up. I couldn't breathe for like a minute. I mean, it was like, I don't know if you probably played football or whatever, but you get the wind knocked out of you. It was like the worst getting wind knocked out of you I ever had. Like I said, I probably fell 14 feet or so, just a free fall on my back. And when I slammed my head back, I just remember seeing white, but I didn't pass out or anything. I just couldn't breathe for a minute. I kind of stood up and was feeling around me. I was like, okay, I think I'm okay. I couldn't find my light. I couldn't find my phone. It was pitch black because I'm one of them guys. I stay up in the tree, until just in case there's deer around, whatever. I stay up there pretty late, but yeah, I couldn't breathe. It was pretty scary, but I don't know, man. It was just one of them things. And then like I'm scrambling around on my hands and knees trying to find my phone because I wanted to text my brother and say, hey, I fell. I think I'm all right. But he was literally like 3/4 of a mile, maybe a mile away from me because we hit this cornfield that's like a mile long and we both went opposite directions, which I don't recommend. And there wasn't very good service. I tried sending them in my pin and stuff. We try and do that and be safe with all that stuff. But obviously, when you go into the woods, you don't think that you're going to fall out of the tree. But that's kind of just a quick summary of what happened.
So when that happens, right? Like, what next? So we all are, to some degree, like, I mean, and I have to really like commend you. And there's other guys too, like Greg Litzinger, and tons of guys who've like fallen out of trees. And it's a very like, we're all very prideful. So what do you do? And especially like for the one sticking side of it, for saddle hunting stuff, and like talking to your wife and telling her like, hey, and how does it change like your outlook on hunting, or the next day, the next time you climb that
Yep.
tree with that same gear?
Yeah, no, it's man, I tell you what, it makes you second guess a lot of stuff. I thought after that, like, oh man, I should go back to climbing with sticks and this and that. And I'll be honest, it took me a little bit once I got home to like climb again with all the same stuff, right? Because at first, like when it first happened, I wasn't exactly sure what happened or how it happened, right? Because like I've done that so many times and got back down to the ground safely that like at first it took me, I would say, till the next day until like rethinking about what happened and how everything just happened, right? Like at first I thought that my Mad Rock failed, which I was like, that would be highly unlikely, right? And then I tested it again and I was like, no, it's working perfectly fine. So yeah, it definitely makes you, second guess and just make sure. Now when I climb, ever since this happened, I go a lot slower. There's no point in rushing. I go a lot slower and move a lot safer, I would say. It definitely makes you think about falling a lot more, to where before I never even thought about it because I just did it so much that I was just safe and thought I was good to go. But it definitely changes your perspective on things as far as like, if I would have gotten seriously injured, I mean, there's no way that that's worth, ending up in the hospital or, not, having my kids not have me anymore and stuff. So it's just like, just want to be more careful and, always test your gear, make sure you're doing it right. And honestly, like after that happened, the first thing I did when I got home was I went and I bought new rope. I went and upgraded my rope to Canyon Elite. And I don't know if you know the difference because you're not a one stick guy, but Elite's it's got kind of a texture to it, right? And it's a little bit bigger diameter. So that was the first thing I did, was swap out my rope and do a new one and do like a few practice climbs. And I've never had an issue ever since then. So I guess, I don't know, I just go slower and take my time and just do everything I can to make sure that never happens again.
So how long did it take you to like figure out that that's what happened? Or, I mean, because obviously you don't want to recreate it. I mean, maybe at 1 foot off the ground or something like that, but even then, so how long did it take you to figure that out?
Honestly, that night I hit my head pretty good, even though it was sand. I can still remember it like going white for a second. How like back in the day you play football and you make a good hit or get hit and you just kind of get a white light. I mean, that definitely did happen. I don't know if I had a concussion or whatever. I didn't go to the doctor. I'm one of them guys, but I mean, it definitely took me like the next day and replaying it over and over in my mind. Like, okay, what did I do wrong? And what I realized is stopping myself midway. So I kind of forgot to say this in the first part, but when I stopped and put my foot on the branch, I can't remember exactly what happened because the tree was leaning so far forward. My ropes were like hanging straight down from the base of the tree, if that makes sense. So the base of the tree was like to my right almost. And when I took my foot off, that's when I fell and I was like hanging horizontal, just because of the way the tree was shaped. So I literally fell like straight down sideways, horizontal, straight to the ground. But yeah, it definitely took me till the next day until replaying it in my mind over and over again. Like, how did that happen? I tested my Mad Rocks, like, well, it can't be that, because I could like ream on that and it wasn't breaking loose or anything. And then that night I thought, well, maybe my pull down rope, because my pull down rope, like sometimes will get wrapped around my right foot. And I thought, well, maybe when I let go of the tree, my right foot went down and pulled my Mad Rock lever open. And I'm like, man, what are the chances of that? There's no way, right? So, but that's what I found out was I got the rope back out and I put it back through the Mad Rocks. Like, all right, can I get it out of this little groove? And sure enough, like if I created enough slack, it would pop out of there. So it could have just been the simple fact that maybe that CIV got worn down so much that it put it out of spec. But as soon as I put the Elite in there, it's like it don't ever come out. Plus, I wrapped a little tape around there, like hockey tape, just to make it a little bit thicker on that little silver part of the Mad Rock, so that way it'll never happen again. But I am thinking about getting a new Mad Rock.
And yeah, for guys that even if you're not a one sticker, I've had the exact same thing happen with Oplux, right? And it always happens to me when it's I've been using these ropes for, I don't know, I just keep finding more. So it's like, oh, I'll use this one. Like, I mean, that's what we used to haul up that deer in Kansas. That's what it was hanging from, was some Oplux.
Yeah.
But the sheath on it like stretches and it gets a little bit thinner.
Yep.
And so I haven't had it happen with a duck or a ropeman, but with a prusik, if it gets really cold or gets wet, like I've had the prusik start to slide, even, so where I got to throw another loop on it just to get it to hold on. And then I noticed with the, and I know it's out of spec for a ropeman one, yada, yada. Yeah. And see, this is what we're talking about here. What, like there's, I'm like, it's not going to
yada, yada until you're laying on your back, bud.
Yeah. 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 Thank you very much. But I noticed that it actually like bites way into the rope. And so the Kong is the worst, and the Kong is the one that's spec'd out for it. But I have to like literally like yank that out of the rope, and it makes this big god awful noise where it's like, that's why I'd rather use the ropeman, because it's, even though it's out of spec, it's like, it doesn't make any noise. Well, this is why you don't do that. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know so for people who are, even after hearing this and they're like, you know what, I still want to do one sticking, and they're going through their gear and you're like, man, I don't really know, because there isn't, I mean, obviously, it's none of those guys' faults. It's not the cool kids' faults, but you're just using whatever. I mean, hell, I've seen pictures on those forums of guys making a cord out of paracord, a saddle out of paracord, that like they used to use the sit drags, all the stuff that, is safe until it isn't.
Right.
And, all of these quote unquote big name guys, these guys that are putting out all this information, that's what they're using. So that's what you're using. Like, where would you say now, would you get your information? If someone was getting into it right now, like, how do you know what's right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I don't really know if there is like obviously there's not like a brand X or whatever that's like, hey, this is what you're supposed to use to be safe or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to answer that, I guess. I mean, EWO is where I got all my stuff. I feel like the majority of the saddle community, or, the people that sell all the saddle stuff, I feel like the majority of it is fairly safe. And I think they do a pretty good job of, like, obviously they care about people and they want to keep people safe. I know a lot of the ropes and stuff are rated and tested and all that, but I think it's just so many different things can happen, right? I mean, just the stuff you don't think about, like in my situation, for example. But on that note, I mean, you got to get a system that you're comfortable with. If you don't have confidence, you don't want to be climbing with it. Even to this day, I still think about that when I climb, right? It's always in the back of my mind, which I think is a good thing, because I'm always trying to be safe. It's not that I wasn't before, But obviously when something like that happens and you walk away from it, you're thankful, right? But you also want to learn from it for the future so it never happens again. So my big piece of advice is, if you are going to do it, just make sure you practice, make sure you buy stuff that you're confident in, and I don't know, get stuff that you think is going to keep you safe.
Yeah, and thinking about it, a lot of the stuff and the seasoned guys that are on here listening, I can think like Tim Clark, he's saying, well, you can go to like the rock climbing manufacturers, and as long as you stay in spec or whatever, you could look on the rock climbing forums and that sort of stuff. But like it's almost like, when you go to name your website, right, for car parts, and it's really annoying, and it says put in your make and model and engine and color and trim,
Right.
all this stuff that you feel like is unnecessary. But when you put two things in your cart, it says, hey, this isn't compatible with your vehicle. Like, it would almost be helpful if it's like, hey, you got this Mad Rock and you got this CIV, right? And it's
Right.
like, whoa, hey, those aren't compatible. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it would seem like that we need something like that, um, for safety's sake,
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely, and like, if you think back to I shouldn't say how all this started, but I mean, for us guys, like I know me, I would say the saddle game started. I think I got my first one in 2018 or 2019, which crazy to think that's 5 years ago now. But I mean, when all this started, it was like buying whatever you can and throwing stuff together, right? Like I can't even tell you the amount or the different setups that I've had bought and sold, right? I mean, I think everybody went through a little phase of that, of like buying everything. And some guys still do, right? The guys that are on YouTube and like doing all that stuff. But like for me, I just wanted to basically find a system that worked for me to get me in the woods and on the deer that I wanted to kill. And I felt like the one sticking kind of got me there. And even the system that I'm going to go into this season with is the same system I had last year. And I don't really see it changing anytime soon. Um, and I don't think in the 5 years that I'm talking about, there's been any newer or updated safety to the equipment, right? I mean, I think it's all kind of the same at this point. Like, I don't know. I guess that's a really hard question to, like wrap your mind around and even think about, that it's still just kind of the same old of the stuff that we were doing 5 years ago to get into it. Obviously there's some improvements, but as far as like the legality of all the safety stuff, I feel like it's still the same.
Well, I mean, I understand, and I've had this conversation, um, at least kind of like at length with Sean from Trophy Line, and maybe a little bit with the Latitude guys, but I guess I just kind of feel like maybe there's a reason that none of the major players, right? And you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not really paying attention that much, but they don't have a one stick. Tether doesn't have one. Trophy Line doesn't have one. Latitude doesn't have one. Cruiser, I don't think, has one. Out on the Limb has one, but Matt's kind of his own animal, right?
Yep.
He's making
Yeah,
his
for
own
sure.
stuff,
Yep.
filling niches that are there. But these
Sure.
guys with this that are making the saddles, that have to carry all the insurance, that have to do all this stuff, they haven't dove in. And it is somewhat of a, like I said, like a niche within a niche. But for a guy that's super passionate about uh one sticking, and even after this, it's still your preferred method of hunting. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, for me, it just goes back to getting up and down the tree as fast as I can, honestly, which I know goes totally against what I said earlier.
But
But
I
like
mean, like, so why aren't any of the major guys, the big names, investing in one sticking?
that's a great question. I don't know. That's I never really thought about that before. I mean, I know, I've heard rumors and whispers about like people coming out with whatever, but you are right. I mean, a lot of the guys that are putting out an actual one stick, I'm trying to think of a few. I mean, there's been a few that have like come and sold a ton of them and then like they don't exist anymore. So I've kind of always been a out on a limb guy, big fan of Matt's. from back when I used to use sticks. I think his shikars were like some of the first like high quality sticks that I ever spent good money on. Right. So that just kind of transitioned me into his one stick, but I don't really know the answer to that, why some of these other guys don't have a one stick. I know, I've kind of asked like for more one sticks, smaller, lighter, whatever. I actually last season did half of my season with one sticking with a tethered one stick and a Predator platform in my pack, because I got their new backpack last year. So I put my Predator pack on the outside of that, and that's kind of how I was rolling for a little bit. But then I just went back to the Big Bob just for the space, and it's a little bit bigger. But that is very interesting. I've never really thought about that before. Why no one else has a one stick? Maybe it is a legal thing. I don't know.
And so I guess from your perspective and having done it for so much time, and maybe this is part of your class or whatever, but like, who would be a good candidate for one sticking and who wouldn't be a good candidate for one sticking?
Well, I gotta laugh at that because I can't tell you how many people over the years that I've got to kind of like not only get into saddle hunting, because I'm like a I don't know what you want to call it, but like a saddle hunting guru, I guess. Like I'm one of them guys, I'm a sales guy, so I talk a lot, and like I got a lot of buddies all over the place and stuff. So like I'm always like trying to get people to try it.
Saddle
Over
hunting
the
hype
years,
man.
yeah, pretty much, kind of something like that. I've gotten a lot of people to try it. Honestly, just some people love it, some people do it. It's not for everyone, but then some people, like I just said, you get people into it, and some people like it, some people don't. As far as the one sticking goes, I got a buddy Josh that comes over every now and then and shoots bows with me, and he's a bigger guy. He's like, I don't even know how tall he is. He's tall, like 6'6", bigger guy, and he really wanted to get into it, and tried my stuff, and he's like, man, I don't know. He's like, I'd have to really practice, but he loves the idea of having less stuff, right? That's who I hunted Kentucky with last year, and he literally carries 6 tethered one sticks with him, and he'll go 30, 40 feet in the air. Like sometimes when I get down and I go to meet him, he's so high up there I can't even find him. Like literally, I'm not even joking. It's like I'm like, where, I gotta like shine my light, and then he shines his light, because it takes him forever to get down because he has so much stuff. But yeah, so he tried it, and it's like he's just like, man, I don't know. He says that he thinks he's too big. I don't think there's really like a size requirement, right? Obviously, I'm a smaller guy. I'm like 6 foot, 175 pounds, soaking wet. So for me, it's real easy to go up and down, where a bigger guy like him got to go a lot slower and take your time, because obviously the biggest thing is you don't want to fall. And then plus when you're up there, if you got a guy that's like, all I'm saying is if I was 250 pounds, I might think differently, right? About being up that high with equipment that, you got, like you said, you got one rope and a Mad Rock safeguard that's holding you up off the ground. But actually, I just thought of that one thing that I have changed since my fall is that I actually loop my rope on my way down through a belt on my saddle now. So like if I were to fall, that's always there. So like I can, you kind of like a fishing line, reel in a fishing line when you hook your finger around it. I keep it looped around my little saddle strap on my leg. So that way, if I were to fall, I could like grab the bottom end of that and it would stop me from falling, if that makes sense. I just thought of that when I was envisioning Josh climbing I got a saddle pole out in my yard that I climb up and shoot. So.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, these guys at these shows, when they come up and they're like, what do you think about one sticking? I'm like, I'm not a one sticking guy. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's same thing. It's like, I really enjoy saddle hunting. I feel like there's lots of guys that it's for, but it's not for necessarily the ladder stand guy. Like my brother just wants
Right.
to go out, and he doesn't really care about hunting. He just cares that he's not at work. Like,
Right.
so he
Yeah.
just wants a nice, easy, and
Yep.
not that I think saddle hunting's hard, but it's just, there are some people that are better suited that have a different mentality. And I think
Yeah.
that goes even one further to the one sticking. And I don't know. I just think about a couple of the other guys that I know that one stick that are, passionate about it and all
Yeah.
that stuff. But much like many of the original saddle hunting guys, I would say, they could fit in a saddle pouch as a sleeping bag. These guys are
Right.
tiny and they just run up the tree. And when you were talking about Greg Stagg's son being 14, like, do you remember being 14 and like you said, you were out climbing trees? I mean, the first,
Yeah.
the first time I hunted from a tree stand with my bow, I had I don't know, 20-pound steel
Yep.
welded stand that I carried up with one hand, and I just climbed all the limbs on a pine tree,
Yep.
got up there and hung it. And then I sat up there with the oldest, if you remember, like the figure eight looking uh safety harnesses that was a loop around the tree,
Yep.
a connector, and then another belt that went around you that if you fell it'd cut you in half, and that's why they don't use those anymore.
I remember.
But there was no stick, there was no screw in step, there was no
Yep.
anything. It was just climb up there, boy, and
Right.
hang it about right there.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of agility, a little bit of
Yep.
movement, and anything with practice, right? But
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it's all about, and like we started this conversation, it's all for me now. It's all about being completely 100% mobile as fast as I can be. I mean, my Iowa buck in 21, if I wouldn't have moved from my original spot that I hung, I would have never killed the deer that I did, and that was only because I seen a doe and I kind of looked at the map and I was like, okay, I need to make a plan. There was a cut bean field, right? So I made a plan and got down and moved. And it's for me the one sticking, like I can zoom right down and pack everything up and move spots literally in 10 minutes, right? And go deeper, or if I see a deer that I want to move in on or whatever. That's what it's all about for me, is just kind of moving quick and staying on the deer, I guess.
all right, you got anything else for one sticking that you would say to people?
Just practice. I mean, watch a lot of videos, do your research. If you're using a Mad Rock Safeguard, I cannot recommend Canyon Elite enough. That rope for me was a game changer. I mean, obviously, I still have flashbacks and stuff when I'm climbing. Like, I'm never going to forget that. But now that I'm using Elite, I do feel a lot safer. It's just got texture to it. It doesn't. So far, it hasn't like um, frayed at all or like gotten smaller. It stays its normal size. But yeah, just practice, 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 man. Just like anything in life, you just gotta, if you're gonna go with that, I highly recommend to practice if you're gonna do that route.
So I just want to shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about our hunt in
Sure.
Kansas, uh,
Yeah, man.
because I feel like you guys got the short end of the stick on that one.
Nah.
Well, so Chris and his brother are planning, and I don't know if maybe you had another guy that was going to come with you or something like that, and they're like, he like had a place or whatever, and then I come along, and it was like the day that the Kansas tags like got drawn, and I had absolutely zero intention of hunting Kansas. I wasn't smart enough to find, and I had the same problem this year just trying to buy a point. It took me 20 minutes to figure it out. And I've seen a bunch of other people. I've talked to a bunch of other people that are like, how do you buy a point in Kansas? And I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
remember. But I did it. I bought a point this year, but all of a sudden, boom, I get a thing that says your credit card's been charged 400 and some dollars. And I'm like, I guess I'm hunting Kansas. So then I'm scouring the internet, on Facebook to see like everybody else who's drawn. And then I come across Chris and he's like, oh yeah, Drew Kansas. And I'm like, all right, what are you thinking? What zones? And we drew the exact same zone. So I was like, okay, well, at least I know. Cause I guess I didn't really have a problem going out there by myself. But I wanted to know other people in the area in case I needed help or,
For sure.
anything, even have a meal or whatever. And, Chris is like, well, I got a place, just, hit me up. And so I waited probably until October and I'm like, yeah, well, I still don't have any place to go. And he's like, yeah, come on. So like, what was your, kind of like expectations or whatever going into that, like hunting Kansas?
Yeah, so honestly, for me, the whole Kansas deal is something my brother and I talked about for a few years, and it was more about just kind of going out there and doing it with him, than it was like going out and getting a big buck, or like obviously we want to shoot a big deer, right? But it was more of just a trip for he and I to kind of go out there together. And then I ran into you at the Kalamazoo show at the Hunters Expo or whatever. And we got talking, and that kind of got my gears turning. I did have one other guy that was like contemplating going, I think, but something happened with family or something, and he couldn't end up going. So my brother and I just had that place rented, and I figured, what's one more? It's like we had the space and whatever. Plus, looking back on it now, I'm glad that the way that everything worked out. But really, we were just looking out. We had never been there before. In my experience, it's always good to, like, if you've never gone somewhere, I always kind of consider the first year I go somewhere new as like, hey, whatever happens, happens. At least I'm going to get to know the area and, put pins on my Onyx. And if I get one, great. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't ever really expect to kill out of state on the first year that I go there. Kind of like my Kentucky season last year. I know that if I were to ever go there again and go back to the same area, I would be like 10 steps ahead of where I was the first year I went, right? I'd be way more confident to go out there and kill a deer. So the Kansas trip was just about going out with my brother and trying to get on some deer. And honestly, they banned the trail cameras, right? Which, I mean, trail cameras aren't everything, but for us, it makes it more fun to get the trail cam pics and all that stuff. Like I do it with my kids, but we applied and did all that before we knew that the trail cameras were getting banned. So that was kind of a bummer. I feel like it would have went better if I could have done a scouting trip out there and put trail cams out. But it is what it is. We still went out there and had fun, and we didn't end up killing one. But my brother had an opportunity to kill the biggest deer that he's ever seen in his life. Um, it just kind of outsmarted us. But we ended up finding one that we wanted to kill. Seen a whole bunch of really nice bucks. Lots on private land, knocked on a couple doors and got rejected. But it is what it is, man. It's all about the experience and making memories with him. And we went and did it. And honestly, like I said at the beginning of this, you getting that buck and going and being there to help you and doing all that, like, that's something I'll never forget, man. That was just, it's what it's all about, honestly. And I'm glad that we had the chance to experience it together.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I don't know. I said it a million times and I feel bad like like because I'm just like, it was supposed to be, I mean, I had like 10 days or 11 days or something. Like it was supposed to be hard. Like it was supposed to be
Yeah.
like a learning thing. And then
Yep.
the deer wouldn't even run away when I missed him. He was like, no, you're going to kill me, man. Like for real. And, yeah. So what were you thinking? Like, so when I texted you and I'm like, I just stuck one, I don't know how it's going. Like it's second day, 8 o'clock in the morning, something like that.
Yeah.
East wind. So you get a text from me. What are you thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, you've been in the woods enough with buddies and stuff that I was super happy for you. I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. When you get those texts and it's like, I don't know, we put so much time and effort into getting that opportunity and getting the chance to go track one. And just being out there to help you do that was just like, it's awesome. I kind of get like goosebumps. I think even when you text me, I think I kind of got goosebumps. If I remember, I was hanging. Actually, that's we were on that. We were trying to kill that big buck that we talked about at the beginning of the show. And my brother and I set up like in between and kind of figured out what his route was and maybe where he would come back and all that stuff. But yeah, I remember hanging in the tree and getting that text. And then I texted my brother. I was like, well, I think we get to go track a deer. So no, it was awesome, man. I was super happy for you. And just crazy how it worked out that the piece that, like, when I started e-scout in Kansas, that chunk that you shot that deer on was the first pin I ever laid in Kansas because it was so close to the house. So it's like, and then like we drove by it and we are like, we didn't even go stop there or scout it or nothing. We just drove past because I don't know, we were all over the place, but it's just crazy how it all works out. But, I honestly feel like that's how it's supposed to happen sometimes. It's not always supposed to be, grind it out. Like my brother and I struggled for, I don't even remember how many days we were there, but it's like, we were on all that walking ground and there was cattle everywhere and people everywhere. And it's like, then you just show up and roll in there and smack one the first morning. So it was awesome. I mean, it's definitely something that I'll never forget.
Yeah, it was, and I did, sent the text and I was like, I don't want you guys to like mess up your hunt, don't.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is like, I guess, what do you think happened? Because, I met them back out at the road and it was, I don't know, the half a mile, 3/4 of a mile from the truck. And I was like, he's like, you want me to get out the deer cart and the knife and all that stuff? And I said, I'm not even bringing a knife. Like because there was just like a little bit of meat and then there were some blood sprays and stuff like that. But like literally where we walked in to the woodlot, we were like 10 yards or 20 yards from like where the deer was dead. And we walked right across that field where there was like blood everywhere. And I know we were just talking and carrying on and stuff like that. But do you think like when we got down in there, like the deer got up and did its final death run, or it was just dead there? Because he looked pretty dead, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I've thought about that a few times. I think he was dead right there. I think that when you shot him, because we were kind of like, I don't know, I'm just kind of guessing, but 20 yards, I'm going to say north. I can't remember what direction it was, but 20 yards to the north from where he was laying. But I think that he was there. I think that's after you shot him. I think he kind of stumbled around down in there where we were walking, and then I think that's where he ended up. I think he was dead already when we walked by.
Yeah, because we walked across that little cut cornfield and like once we followed the blood right back up there, we're like we crossed this, like we walked right here.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, like I was thinking that earlier when you were talking, I learned from that, doing that with you and tracking that deer in Kansas. I learned quite a bit about hunting in Kansas during that. Cause like that little, like we'll call it the food plot back in there. Like you would never even known that was there just by driving by from the road. You know what I'm saying? Unless you got out and put some effort into scouting that little chunk. But yeah, so I kind of learned from you in that regard to find that. And then obviously there was a bunch of deer back in there. So,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah, it was super cool. And like I said, to open the podcast, like I never would have hunted that property, because it was like right next to where we were staying.
Mile and a half.
And like I had written it off because I even came back like that next day, like the first night, and I was like, man, I want to go back to where I was tonight, but there's an east wind, and I'm like, there's like, I don't really know where I'm gonna go. And you guys are like, well, we're gonna go out on that big buck, and I was like, well, this big piece right here, like we can access from the west. Like, do you guys want to hunt that? Or because I was like, well, you guys got the place, it's like right next to it. I'm like, they had to have like done that on purpose. And they're like, yeah, we drove by it, it's not that great. And I was like, well, I don't know, it's not that far either.
No, no, man, I can't remember exactly how it all worked out. How like, were we there 2 days before you or a day?
No, we got there. So we got there.
It wasn't the same day.
We got there. So I drove into Kansas and I was there at night. I drove around and scouted just from the truck, I got up the next morning, drove to a spot like an hour away, and you guys had driven through the night where I slept at the Airbnb and you guys slept at the trailhead, we'll call it.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we got back together that night because you guys hunted that night. I hunted a different spot that night. And then we came back, and that was the first time we were there. Woke up in the morning, and then I killed a deer.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I mean, no, it was obviously I know that you kind of felt bad or whatever, but it's like, dude, this is what we're here for. I mean, we were just happy for you. And like I said, it was helping you get that deer out was a lot of fun. And just that whole, I'll never forget that tracking him. Like, I don't know what you call all that terrain that was like back in there, but I had never really, well, obviously it's my first time in Kansas, but Like I'll never forget the terrain tracking that deer compared to like any other deer I've ever tracked in my life. It's just different, you know? So that's one thing that I take away from it. That was pretty cool. And you hit him good. There was a lot of like the blood trail was pretty cool.
Well, that was what was wild is like, you know, I knew where I hit him, but I saw there was a bunch of arrows sticking out. And so I was like, oh, that's not good. And then I just turned the wrong way on the blood down in the bottom, but it was like I didn't get a pass through, so I only had one thing. And so I'm looking the complete wrong way, but like in the moment and like even being down on myself, I should have thought like if I turned to the right, which is where I was looking for blood, that was right where I was standing. So like if that deer would have curled to the right, I would have seen him. He would have like ran right back at me. So he had to have gone the other way.
Yeah.
And then once you guys were like, oh, there's blood, it was like just kind of like walking to find blood. It wasn't like, but it was super cool. And then what was weird, and I don't know, maybe you can articulate this better because I don't, you know, in my mind, I see it a certain way. And like, I look back at those pictures and stuff like that. And especially like the pictures of the deer on the cart. But when we walked up to him, I was like, oh, there's like ground shrinkage. Like he's not as big as I thought. But then when we got up there, like his body was so freaking big.
Oh yeah.
I mean, did you feel that way? Like about the body size of that deer?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That deer, I mean, that deer's body was, I mean, obviously we're Michigan guys, right? So it's like anytime you go out west, and just in my opinion, it's like when you finally get a deer on the ground, a buck, especially out there, no matter how big the rack is, typically, usually, just in my experience, the body seems humongous. Like, what was it? 22. My son and I went out to Missouri for youth, and he ended up getting a nice one. And that's walking up to that deer when we finally found it. I was like blown away at how big it was. And then like I had to gut it, right? Because my son was only like 9. I couldn't. The thing was so big, I couldn't even roll it over by myself. With the rack stuck in the, it's like they're just humongous. But yeah, I mean, I can remember looking at your buck's hooves, and I'm like, man, I can remember slapping its belly and laughing and looking at you like they don't, you know, it's like they don't grow them like this in Michigan. You know what I mean? Like even though they do, right? That's just what I'm saying. But it's like it's hard to believe when you walk up, finally get your hands on them, how big the body is. It's insane.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was super cool.
Which one is it behind you? The one right behind your head right here? The other
that one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would have shot him.
Yeah, I mean, I would have shot him every day, but
100%.
Even on the first or second day, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I don't know. I just, you know, it was a fun hunt. And I really appreciate like the hospitality, you know, just saying like, okay, well, yeah, come on down, stay with us.
Yeah.
You know, we booked this place for this property alone, but you go hunt it. It's okay.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. No, that's what it's all about, man. Honestly, you know, I talk about guys and buddies that I hunt with. And if I look at the last 10 years of my hunting career, some of the best memories that I have are the times where you're just hanging out and like the, you know, camaraderie of the hunt cap aspect of it. And a lot of those days are better than the days where I shot my biggest buck. You know, when I killed the biggest buck I've ever shot in my life, I was alone. I was all by myself. You know, so when you're with a group and somebody gets one, I mean, that always creates special memories. Just little stuff like, you know, I mentioned in the terrain and like I can still remember seeing the chunky blood trail and all that. It's like, you know, I'll never forget that little stuff. So it's just cool. And my brother was there to experience it with me. Like I said, that's kind of why we went out there. So it was great, man. It was a fun trip. And I don't know, maybe we'll have to do it again someday.
Yeah. I got a property.
There you go.
It's super easy. Trust me.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, if people have questions about, you know, one sticking or anything like that, like how could they reach out to you or where would they find you at?
Facebook. Let's see, just my normal name, Chris Coon. I'm on Instagram, Chris Coon 24. I think I got a picture of my tethered 10 buck on there. But yeah, pretty much those are the two platforms that I use the majority of the time. Facebook Messenger, whatever. If people have questions, I'm always answering questions for people and, you know, just guys around doing saddle demos and stuff like that. So it's fun.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on and, kind of getting, a little vulnerable, talking about like how we mess up and all that sort of stuff. So I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. I just, I feel like it's a good idea. The time of the year is guys are starting to practice. And if one guy hears this and doesn't make the same mistake or do the same thing I did, then it's worth it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Chris.
Yep. Thank you.
Don't miss Thursdays with Saltwater Experience, brought to you by Golden Boat Lifts, every Thursday night from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment.
You're listening to the Waypoint Podcast Network, brought to you in part by HuntStand, the #1 hunting and land management app.